Hi Year 3. It's time for chapter 12 of Fantastic Mr. Fox, and this chapter is called Badger, so it may well give you a clue as to the next character that we're going to meet. I wonder what will happen. Have a think over what's happened so far. I wonder if there'll be any more problems for Mr. Fox to get round. I'm sure there will. As with every other video, I will go through the Viper's questions at the end, so have a look when I put them on the screen and pause it if you need to, and then we'll do the answers together. Okay, I hope you enjoy it. So chapter 12 is called Badger. Let's get started. Mr. Fox and the 3 remaining small foxes dug fast and straight. They were all too excited now to feel tired or hungry. They knew they were going to have a whacking great feast before long, and the fact that it was none other than Boggis's chickens they were going to eat made them chortle with laughter every time they thought of it. So have a look over our Viper's questions here, because that's one of our first questions. Why did the foxes laugh every time they thought about the chickens? It was lovely to realise that while the fat farmer was sitting up there on the hill waiting for them to starve, he was also giving them their dinner without knowing it. "Keep digging," said Mr. Fox. "It's not much further." Oh, I wonder where they're going. He hasn't told them, has he? He hasn't told them where they're going. I wonder where it will be. Ooh. All of a sudden, a deep voice above their heads said, "Who goes there?" The foxes jumped. They looked up quickly, and they saw, peeking through a small hole in the roof of the tunnel, a long, black, pointed, furry face. "Badger!" cried Mr. Fox. "Foxy!" cried Badger. "My goodness me, I'm glad I found someone at last. I've been digging around in circles for 3 days and nights, and I haven't the foggiest idea where I am." Badger made the hole in the ceiling bigger and dropped down beside the foxes. A small badger, his son, dropped down after him. "Haven't you heard what's happening up on the hill?" Badger said excitedly. "It's chaos. Half the wood has disappeared, and there are men with guns all over the countryside. None of us can get out, even at night. We're all starving to death." "Who is we?" asked Mr. Fox. "All us diggers, that's me, and Mole, and Rabbit, and all our wives and children. Even Weasel, who can usually sneak out of the tightest spots, is right now hiding down my hole with Mrs. Weasel and 6 kids. What on earth are we going to do, Foxy? I think we're finished." Mr. Fox looked at his 3 children, and he smiled. The children smiled back at him, sharing his secret. Oh, why do you think Mr. Fox is smiling there? That's very curious. "My dear old Badger," he said, "this mess you're in is all my fault." "I know it's your fault," said Badger furiously, "and the farmers are not going to give up till they've got you. Unfortunately, that means us as well. It means everyone on the hill." So we'll just stop there, because I want you to find a word or a phrase that shows us that Badger is very cross with Mr. Fox, because that's one of our next Viper's questions. So have a look at that passage and see if you can find it. Badger sat down and put a paw around his son. "We're done for," he said softly. "My poor wife up there is so weak she can't dig another yard." Oh, that's interesting, because that's what happened to Mr. Fox as well. Mrs. Fox couldn't go much further, and now it's happening to poor Badger. Let's see what happens next. "Nor can mine," said Mr. Fox, "and yet at this very minute she is preparing for me and my children the most delicious feast of plump, juicy chickens." "Stop!" cried Badger. "Don't tease me. I can't stand it." It's true, cried the small foxes. Dad's not teasing, we've got chickens galore. And because everything is entirely my fault, said Mr. Fox, I invite you to share the feast. I invite everyone to share it. You and Mole and Rabbit and Weasel and all your wives and children. There'll be plenty to go around, I can assure you. You mean it? Cried Badger. You really mean it? So I'm just going to pause there because one of our Viper's questions is an inference question, and it says, why does Badger think Mr. Fox is teasing him? So have a look back at the passage we've just read and see if you can answer that. Mr. Fox pushed his face close to Badger's and whispered darkly, do you know where we've just been? Where? Right inside Boggis's chicken house number 1. No. Yes, but that is nothing to where we're going now. You have come just at the right moment, my dear Badger. You can help us dig, and in the meanwhile, your small son can run back to Mrs. Badger and all the others and spread the good news. Mr. Fox turned to the small Badger and said, you tell them that they're invited to a fox's feast. Then bring them all down here and follow this tunnel back until you find my home. Yes, Mr. Fox, said the small Badger. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. Oh, thank you, sir. And he scrambled quickly back through the hole in the roof of the tunnel and disappeared. Okay, so your last Viper's question is an explain question. So think about what we've just read and explain how the new characters have been introduced. So remember to think of yourself as an author when you do this one and explain how they were introduced into the story. Okay, and then we will look over the answers together. So now we're on chapter 12, the answers to the Viper's questions. So the first question was an inference question. Why did the foxes laugh every time they thought about the chickens? So have a think about why they would find that funny and compare answers. So my answer says, they found it funny that they were going to eat Boggis's chickens while he was trying to find them. And we know that Boggis was probably right outside the fox's hole at that point while they were eating his chickens. The next question is a vocabulary question. It says, find a word or phrase that shows that Badger was cross with Mr. Fox. So you may have to go back and have a look for it in the text. My answer has copied the vocabulary and the phrase from the text. And it says, I know it's your fault, said Badger furiously. And I think it's the word furiously that gives us the clue that Badger is upset. The next question is an inference question, and it says, why does Badger think Mr. Fox is teasing? So if you remember, he says, oh, don't tease me. Why does he use that word? So my answer says, he thinks he is teasing because Mr. Fox knows Badger has been thinking about chickens to eat. And the final question is an explain question. So explain how the new characters are introduced. So if you were an author, explain how this has been done in the text. The characters are introduced whilst digging, and we quickly realise that they are already friends. So the way that they greet each other and say hello gives us some more information that they've already met. So these are my answers to the Viper's questions for chapter 12. Have a look over them and compare them with your answers. And then we'll move on to chapter 13. I hope you're enjoying the story. See you soon.